Wanna talk? So let's talk. Yeah. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk, you wanna talk.
Good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Talk to Solomon Show. I'm your in-studio host, retired Chief of Police Steve Davis. And also with us on the phone tonight, we have several guests by phone and by Skype. But first of all, on the phone is our regular host and the commander of this program, Mr. Stan Solomon. Stan, are you with us?
I am certainly with you, and thank you, Steve, for taking the helm.
Well, I want you to know it just feels great for me to be here and in control of the disconnect button. So I'm in complete control of all of your conversation tonight, maybe. Also with us, a co-host, Mr. Brent Johnson. Brent, are you with us?
I sure am. You sound like Alexander Haig. I'm in complete control.
Of certain factions, I am tonight. That's very true. So how's things in your world tonight?
Doing just fine. Sorry I missed you last time out. We had some technical difficulties, but we're all fine now. And by the way, you look great, Steve.
Thank you. I've worked very hard to look this way, but I have to give most of credit to my parents and Jesus Christ. They're the ones that created me. So I'll give them the due that they're owed to. And also tonight with us, our special guest for this segment is Mr. Michael Connelly. Michael, are you with us?
I am. Thanks for having me.
No, it's great to have you with us. I've also been reading, I noticed here that you're an author of two or three books. I've been reading some of the reviews, not the reviews, but some of the information about those books, and some of it looks very, very exciting. First of all, called The Mortarmen, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about that, and also your book about the Constitution, if you would.
Well, The Mortarmen is a book I wrote about my father's unit during World War II, the 87th Chemical Mortar Attack. They landed on the second wave at Utah Beach and were in combat for 326 straight days. And nobody ever wrote about them before. And in the book, Our Constitution, I take each segment, article, section, and amendment to the Constitution, and I put them in exactly the way they were written originally. And then I add my comments about what the Founding Fathers meant for them to mean and what they're supposed to mean. And we've had a tremendous response to that booklet.
Well, we certainly need a tremendous response to anything good about our Constitution, because most of the kids in America, first of all, aren't taught about the Constitution, and second of all, at least half, maybe more of our own politicians regard the Constitution as an impediment rather than something good for our country. Now tonight, you're going to help us and talk to us about the United Nations plan to control the Internet, which to me, my opinion is the United Nations is the problem, not the solution to anything. But before we start that, I'd like to mention a couple of stories we have here, and I think these kind of go along with what you're going to tell us, and I'd like to get your views on this as well, along with our other guests. First one is, believe it or not, our president, Barack Obama, has embarrassed us again. He went on an Asia trip, and he mispronounced over and over again the middle name of the most prominent human rights activist on the planet, and kept calling her middle name Yan instead of San. And also in Burma, he used his own version of the description of the Burma president, instead of using the term that's supposed to be used by the United States. Another story we have, the CNN put out a video. They played a video on their network, and then found out that it was a fake later on. And also another video was portrayed on CNN where some Hamas personnel were saying that a man was injured. In reality, that was a fake video as well. So I believe that all of this leads into what, if the United Nations controls the Internet, will the truth ever come out?
No, it won't. And what's happening with the United Nations is that there's a meeting scheduled in December in Dubai, with the Russians and the Chinese being the primary movers behind this. What they're trying to do is take an old treaty, an old telecommunications treaty, which was signed years ago and basically was designed to control the telephone lines under the oceans and that type of communications. They want to upgrade that and update that treaty to basically take control of the Internet. And when I say control, I mean control. They want to control the content of the Internet, what you and I can look at and listen to. They want to license the providers so that only the providers who are providing content that they agree with will be licensed and able to do so. And finally, and this is Obama's favorite part, they want to tax the use of the internet. So we have all of the things that Obama likes. He tried to get through Congress a kill switch for the internet that would allow him to, for any reason whatsoever, declare that there was a cyber emergency or some other type of emergency and basically take over the content of the internet and shut it down completely. That was withdrawn from both houses when there was so much outcry against it. So he's decided to go to the United Nations and go along with this treaty, and he's pushing for this treaty because he thinks that will give him what Congress refuses to give him.
Well, Stan, you have a program on the internet. We're working that program right now. So what are your thoughts about the United Nations controlling the internet?
Well, the United Nations is an anti-freedom, anti-individual right organization that would turn the internet into a tool for controlling rather than what it is now, which is a tool that people can utilize to accomplish various and sundry things. And there's nothing positive that you can say, but I think Michael's right on note that this president, and I call him that with a great discomfort, this president has no respect for, love for, or even knowledge of the Constitution, and is looking for ways to circumvent it and eventually eliminate it.
Well, Brent, you're always up to speed on conversations about freedom and our Constitution. So what are your thoughts about the United Nations controlling the internet?
Well, first off, the United Nations is known to be a socialistic communist organization. Okay, it is basically a bunch of unelected officials who want to rule the world and turn everything into a socialist state. So number one, I don't recognize the United Nations as having any authority. Furthermore, the U.S. Constitution does not allow for the government of the United States to turn over authority to an unelected foreign body. Therefore, the UN membership, the U.S. membership in the UN is bogus and invalid as well, since it's not authorized by the Constitution. The Constitution, whatever else people may say about it, the Constitution is a limitation on the U.S. government. It determines what the government can do and cannot do. When the government does something that it is not authorized to do, it is as if you or I were to do something that we're not authorized to do. It's invalid. It has no meaning in either U.S. or international law. It is invalid. It doesn't count. So, having said that, the Constitution remains as a limitation on government. But the government is staffed by criminals, among them Obama. He's not president. He's not eligible to be president, so he can't be president. He is a usurper. He is a dictator. He is a Marxist. And he's a thug. And so anything that he does is invalid and has no meaning in law. However, he's got a bunch of criminals who support him. The only way that you're going to stop that is by rising up, having the people themselves rise up and stop the criminals. So what do I think of the UN's effort to control the internet? What right does anybody have to control the internet? Who has the right to sit there and say, we're going to dictate what you can and cannot do with this technology? Where does anybody even come up with the right to do that or the authority to do that? So the answer is that they have no authority, neither does the U.S. have any authority to control the internet for any reason whatsoever. You know something? If you're worried about copyright infringement, then how about the copywriters don't use the internet? Just don't use it at all. Oh, no, we can't do that. We want to use the internet because we can make money using the internet. Well, then you take risks when you do that. And life is a risk, and the idea that we're going to pass so many laws, control all these things so that there is no risk is absurd. So
those are great comments.
They have no right to do it.
And Brent mentioned two words that struck my ear chords very, very strongly. One was dictate, which goes with dictator, which I believe we got that in office right now, but also he mentioned risk, and I believe that freedom and risk go hand in hand. So if we're going to have freedom, we must be willing to take a risk. Well, Michael, what is the progress so far? We've lost Michael, all right, so we've lost Michael. Technical difficulties, either that or the UN is controlling the internet already, and we don't know about that. But let me
There you go.
but let me go with Stan for a moment and Brent both. So there's been some discussion in the past on this program about treaties, and treaties are mentioned in the Constitution and they are legal. So if the United States creates a treaty, which I don't believe they can with the UN, but is that possible? Do you think that's possible for the United States to create a treaty with the United Nations to control the internet?
Let me throw a thought out here, Steve,
Go ahead.
and then Brent, I'm sure, will give it more technical perspective. The United States Constitution is a straitjacket on government. It cannot do what it is not authorized to do. So if it signed a treaty saying all white people, all black people, all brown people, all yellow people, all red people are to be forthwith enslaved, that treaty would be invalid because they have no authority to enter into and or to confirm such a treaty. So no matter what you want to call it, and we'll use the term treaty, the Constitution sets in hard limits what the temporary members of the United States government can do. And if they try and do something outside of those limits, I don't care what they call it, it cannot be valid. Now, let's let Brent explain it in more detail.
And I think you said it very, very well, by the way. My hat's off to you on that. The Constitution is what's called a document of negative authority. That means if the Constitution does not specifically authorize the government to do a certain thing, the government is not allowed to do that thing. Now, the Constitution, we all know, is the supreme law of the land. Supreme. That means it is the highest law of the land. Treaties that have been duly ratified by the Senate are made part of the Constitution, but it is not possible to enter into a treaty that violates the fundamental organic Constitution. If that was possible, then there would be no reason to have an amendment process. We could just change the Constitution by treaty. If that's how the framers wanted it, that's how they would have put it. They didn't put it that way. So the organic Constitution, the preamble, the first 7 articles, the first 10 articles, an amendment, that's the organic Constitution. That's the supreme law of the land. No subsequent articles of the Constitution can violate the supreme law unless elements have been repealed, such as the 18th Amendment, which was repealed by the 22nd Amendment. So no treaty, no matter what it says, can run contrary to the precepts that are established in the Constitution itself, because that is the supreme law, and the treaty is only subject to the supreme law, that it becomes part of the Constitution.
Well, it would seem to me that the two reasons why the UN would want to take control of the internet would be, number one, to control everything, control all the information so that only what they wanted to be produced or allowed out would get out, and also for money. So somehow they're going to tax everybody for what they allow to be put on the internet. Now, I know in the United States and in the United Kingdom, many businesses promote themselves on the internet. They have advertisements, they have websites, they have different means. So how do you, let's start with Stan first. Stan, how do you see them, the United States, for example, being taxed by the United Nations for use of the internet?
Well, the answer is that the United Nations has no authority, and if the United States, quote unquote, voluntarily agrees, then that would be that argument. They don't have, the United States doesn't have the authority to subjugate its people. But one of the things that you just mentioned, I think, is a critical part of this discussion, because when the Arab world was developed by the Western world, and then the Arab world nationalized those assets, we saw a dramatic transfer of wealth from the Western world to the Arab world, and eventually to other, to South America, Mexico, and other places. What you would be talking about would be, I don't care how it starts, a dramatic transfer of wealth that would equal the lowering of the opportunity and the assets of the people, and the transferring that to a ruling class, ergo the United Nations. So you would basically see the idea of a lord and a serf reinstituted on the entire world, with the serfs having to pay to the lords just for their subsistence and existence. I'll let Brent take it from there.
The way governments have attempted to regulate the internet, and as a matter of fact, Australia had done this, and Australia just backed off now and decided not to try and pursue it. But the way they do it is they go to their licensed internet service providers, and that's where they impose the tax, and that's where they impose the regulations. They don't try and control what you see. They try and get the ISPs to agree to regulate what you can do. So that way, they don't deal directly with governments, the NGOs don't deal directly with the people. Okay, so the solution here is for people to start up, entrepreneurs out there, start up ISPs, and there are already some who are doing it, that are privacy oriented, that will not participate in government efforts to control the internet. As long as there is one internet service provider out there who's willing to do that, government will never be successful in forcing taxation and regulation on the internet. And there is some good defenders of internet freedom, even though they're corporations. Google is extremely powerful, as is Yahoo. And these organizations are very much opposed to internet regulation for obvious reasons. And so, this is not a slam dunk. This is here you have some mega corporations that have a lot of influence and a lot of money who are opposed to it. And in this case, politics makes strange bedfellows. We can get on board with those mega corporations on this particular issue.
All right, Michael Connelly is back with us again. So if, Michael, if you would, please, while we got the time, tell us a little bit about how you got involved with this issue of the internet trying to control, the United Nations trying to control the internet, and how people can get in touch with you for more information.
Well, I'm sorry about going off the air all of a sudden. Apparently, maybe the UN already has some control over the internet because they just shut down on me.
They're after you.
But, well, you're not paranoid if they really are out to get you. But I'm the newly appointed executive director of the United States Justice Foundation, USJF.net. We specialize in issues involving constitutional law. I'm a constitutional attorney. I'll be handling appeals. I'll be handling cases in federal court around the country, along with other attorneys that we work with. We also get involved in some of the high-level cases. For example, we will probably be working on the care case. We filed briefs in the original case. We'll probably be doing briefs in this one. So people that are interested can go to the USGF and find out what we're doing. We are going to have a lot of work to do, obviously, because Obama's assaults on the Constitution are across the board. The internet is just one example. And the Supreme Court has already ruled in 1957 that no treaty signed by the President and either ratified by the Senate can supersede the Constitution of the United States. Yet Obama is saying he can sign this treaty, bypass the Senate, not even have them ratified, and go forward with it, and turn things over to the United Nations. It's a very scary prospect.
Well, thanks for that information, and that's good news to hear. Although I don't have much faith anymore in our Supreme Court. They've made some ridiculous rulings very recently. But what's the progress right now, Michael? Where does this stand right at the moment?
But right now, like I said, the meeting is going to be in December in Dubai. We're watching that very closely. We're also watching the UN meeting that's going to take place about the Small Arms Treaty. There are a number of other treaties out there that Obama is put for. So we're going to be monitoring all of this. And if anything is passed or signed by Obama, if he doesn't, people need to contact the U.S. senators and say to vote against the treaty, or if Obama is refusing to submit the treaty, to have the Senate force him to submit it. There's a lot we'll be watching, and we'll be monitoring all of it on the USGA site.
All right, great. So let's get back to Stan for a minute. Now, Stan, you've got a lot of worldly information and views about a lot of these topics. So have you heard of anything like this before, the Obama administration, where the United States tried to circumvent U.S. law with any type of a treaty or something with the United Nations of this magnitude?
Well, actually, not with the United Nations, although they've tried other things with the United Nations, including the Lost Treaty, the Law of the Sea treaty. But they did try something with the Internet just a short while ago. There was some sort of Internet fairness, Internet parity that would have eliminated programs like ours, that would have allowed the providers to charge based on how much bandwidth you take up. There have been a number of attacks in various ways trying to take the Internet, which is kind of an analogous term, and say that it's like saying, well, we should be able to take radio waves. Well, they did license radio stations, but there are many people that don't need licenses because they don't broadcast over as big an area. Any attempt by government at any level to control technology is for one reason and one reason only: to give government the ability to keep people from having, knowing, or doing something that people should be able to have, know, or do. I'll let Brent take it from there.
And again, you're in great form, Stan. I love what you're saying. This is absolutely true. I mean, the question is whether this has been done before. Absolutely. Obama's tried it. Bush tried it. I think Clinton even tried it. Going out there and trying to engage in treaties, either with other countries or with the United Nations, because the Constitution wouldn't let him do something, so we'll do it by treaty. It's variations on a theme. Pass an executive order when the Congress doesn't authorize something. It's a similar thing. How do I get around the law to accomplish my dictatorial objectives? And it's been becoming more and more prevalent. Bush was worse than Clinton, and Obama is far worse than Bush ever was. And I've said this before. I think what happens is the current criminal in the White House sees that the previous criminal in the White House was able to push the envelope so far and got away with it. So the current criminal in the White House decides to push it even further and see how much he can get away with. And the next criminal will even push it further until the people have had enough and say, you're not going to do this anymore. And since the government's not going to take care of you, we're going to take care of you.
Well, Michael, I want to change topics just for a second, go back to some of your books. I've been reading some of the descriptions here and really got my attention. First of all, as a Army veteran, I'm really intrigued with stories about our other veterans, especially combat veterans, because we would not have our freedom today without the veterans, especially the combat veterans that have served this country so heroically. But one of your books mentions ghosts and legends. That caught my attention. And another book you've written, America's Liveliest Ghosts. You got two books that mention ghosts. So would you tell us a little bit about both those books and why the ghosts are mentioned in those descriptions?
Well, they're actually books of ghost stories. I was a scoutmaster for years, and I was famous or infamous for telling ghost stories around the campfire, and a lot of them concern which is a scout ranch owned by the Boy Scouts for 137,000 acres out of Mexico. I'd heard the stories out there, so I put them in book form. And the second book was just a sort of a follow-up where I collected more stories and put those in book form. And people seem to enjoy reading that sort of things. So that's where that came about.
So what age group are these books, these stories available for? I mean, you mentioned the Scoutmaster and ghost stories. I'm really intrigued now. I can't wait to read these books. But what age groups would really be intrigued and interested in these stories?
Well, anybody can enjoy these age groups. The Philmont stories are about the Scout Ranch, but many adults go there and hear the stories and get fascinated by them too. And the collection is of stories that I collected over years from places like Savannah, Georgia, New Orleans, Louisiana, San Antonio, Texas. So anybody that lives in those areas and just likes to listen to ghost stories and hear about legends, they're for anybody.
I'm totally fascinated. Let me ask you one more question. How do you feel that the UN control of the UN control of the Internet would affect our military operations? Would there be any correlation there at all?
The possibilities are endless. If the United Nations controls the Internet, then they can control access to certain classified information. They control access to combat information. They can, they can play all kinds of games. It basically is an open license for hackers to get into our military if the United Nations is in control. And let's remember, the Chinese and the Russians are the ones pushing for this, and they are not our friends. Never have been our friends.
Well, Stan, I know that you're certainly afraid of liberals like me. Are you afraid of ghosts?
Well, actually, every time I see Michelle and Barack together, I see certain kinds of ghosts, but we'll talk about that another time. I do think that Michael has hit on a vital point. The United States historically has been a country that plays by the rules, breaks some, but plays by the rules and is open, even if it's not voluntarily, because of its people. That is not the case in communist countries like Russia and China. So we would be compelled to play by these rules. They would have no compunction, and they certainly wouldn't even pay. It would be one of those that the payments and the rules are for us, no payments and no rules for them.
Well, Brent, what are your thoughts on this issue so far? Brent, are you with us?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, I'm
all
right here.
So
which part of the issue are we at?
Stan just got through saying that America plays by the rules, other folks don't. So how do you feel that this would happen?
Yeah,
This would go if the UN takes
I don't happen
control?
to agree with that. I don't happen to agree with that. I believe that today America has become arguably the greatest outlaw government, the U.S. In the country. I think that with Operation Paperclip in the 1950s, where they brought over all the Nazi political scientists, they have adopted many of those tactics, and I do not think America plays by the rules at all. I think America is extremely corrupt. Notwithstanding the fact that I would agree China and Russia and other countries are also that way. Government, remember what our founders said about government. Government, at its very best, is a necessary evil. Now, most people take that as justification for government, saying government is necessary, but I take that as an understanding of the character of government. See, government is evil. That's why we have constitutions chained down the beast that is government. So no, I don't think the United States has any claim to the moral high ground at all. I see lies and misrepresentation every day. And it's also true, I have no doubt, in Russia and China and just about every other country in the world.
Well, I knew you'd have your viewpoint, which we always appreciate. Michael, we're just about out of time, but I would like you to tell us, what can the viewers of the Stan Solomon, or the Talk to Solomon show, what can the viewers do to help you in your mission to stop the UN from gaining control of the internet?
Well, they can go to the usjf.net site and donate to us to help us fund the litigation. We do this type of litigation for free. Most of the attorneys who do the work, they do it for, if they don't do it for free, they spend a lot of time and a lot of hours and charge for it. We need to have money for court costs. We need to have money to publicize things. We need, you can go there and make a donation, but most importantly, you can keep up with what's going on. We will keep you informed through that site and through my personal blog on the Constitution at www.michaelconnelly.jigsy.com. I'm always talking about nothing but constitutional issues. So go what we're doing and just help us out. And if you have a constitutional issue facing you, a member of your family, or a group, then by all means contact us and let us know, and we'll see if we can help you.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for sharing your time with us tonight on the Talk to Solomon show. We're out of time for this segment, but folks, stay tuned for the next segment. We're going to be here with Stan Solomon, with Brent Johnson. We're going to talk about Benghazi, and I'll be here, your in-studio host, retired Chief of Police Steve Davis.
You have a computer, if you're alive today, which means you have a hard drive, which means it's going to break down. Mosey, the backup people, for thousands, for Stan, for thousands of people, for tens of thousands of people, is simply common sense. You go to cpnlive.com, click on the icon for Mosey, the backup people, and sign up. It's just a few dollars a month. Let me tell you something. We had a break-in. They stole our whole computer. You know what? When they take the computer, you can't recover anything, but we had Mosey. We had the backup. We were able to restore everything simply by buying another computer. cpnlive.com, click on the icon for Mosey, the backup people, and give yourself common sense, peace of mind, great value, the best thing you've ever done. Sooner or later, it's going to be Mosey, the backup people. I like to eat. Do you like to eat? We all do. And usually we run to the grocery store, we run to the convenience store, or we have something in the fridge. But power's been out in parts of this country in the last few weeks. We don't know what's going to come down the pike economically. Smart people are putting in food. Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves is a line of foods that you can put away that will last for a very long time. You know, they say eat what you store and store what you eat. This is great tasting stuff, healthy for you, a full line. You go to our website, cpnlive.com, and click on the button for Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves and see all the different things we have. This is good tasting food. It's reasonably priced. It will last. And it's worth its weight in gold if a problem arises. I know you don't think there's going to be anything that goes wrong. Actually, you do. This is smart. This is smart insurance. This is smart preparation. This is smart thinking. You have kids, you have a spouse, you have parents, you have dependents, you have an appetite. All those things can be addressed by a frugal but smart investment in Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves. Try them out. You will be tickled to death with the taste of them. You know what? In many cases, people start to eat this and they think, heck, this tastes better and costs less than what you're going to the grocery store to buy. cpnlive.com, check it out. Hey, my name is Stan Solomon, and you know if I have something to say, I'll say it. And I'll only tell you the truth because I'm a Republican, not a Democrat. Democrats always lie. Republicans only lie half the time. I don't lie at all. This is the Fuel Mule. It's an extraordinary product that was developed by a friend of mine, an engineer, and it increases the fuel mileage on your vehicle. If you have a combustion engine, this will increase your mileage by 10 to 20%. It bolts around your fuel line. You can install it yourself or have your mechanic do it. It is an extraordinary item, and it flat works. I've been using it for more than 10 years. It's increased my mileage on every vehicle I put it on, and by the way, it will last forever. You can get rid of your vehicle, just take it off and put on the next one. Go to cpnlive.com. You'll have more information there. You can order it right there. We absolutely guarantee you'll be satisfied. The Fuel Mule. It's a way to kick down your cost of fuel and kick up your mileage. Don't you love the name? I thought of it. The Fuel Mule.